G'day legends, I hope that you're all doing well. Now, I've lied. I'm away, I'm interstate for my pop's 80th, and I said that I wouldn't be making any videos for at least a couple of days while I'm away, but we have seen some significant changes in some areas on the maps, and I thought it is worth talking about this and making a video on this, as these areas we know have been taken at huge cost by the Russian forces over the past 6 months really, or even more, to gain a foothold there, and have been really taken back in a number of a few days. So I thought I'd make a quick video and talk about this. Now, if you see me peering off on other directions, I have a completely janky setup here and different from my usual. So we're just going to have to go with it. Is what we're seeing the start to the major Ukrainian counteroffensive that we have been waiting for now seemingly months to come happen, and what will actually change from there? I've asked you guys this on Telegram, and it's been fairly even, although a slight way in the yes of that this is at least the beginning to these counteroffensives. And this comes as the president of Ukraine, President Zelensky, has said that Ukraine needs more time to prepare for these counteroffensives, and many are pointing at that this could be a feint. All we know is the offensive has to start soon, and Ukraine will employ new trained troops, new weapons delivered, new armoured vehicles delivered, and we'll see it as how these will perform against the Russian forces and the dug-in Russian forces in positions that we've seen being dug in over a number of months or years at this point. Also, what the potential is with these new armoured vehicles for manoeuvre warfare and the mobility to move around some of these defences as well, and that is definitely a possibility. But you need to remember that everyone on this, we're YouTubers, and the sense of authority that I see YouTubers who have never studied war, they've never studied tactics, they've never put on a uniform, the authority they have on speaking of what will happen is absolutely remarkable, and that's amazing. So everything I say, everything anyone else says, take with a grain of salt. I think this is the beginning to a major push, as we've only seen yet a small glimpse of these newly delivered systems and units being used in combat. And I believe what we're seeing is reshaping operations to shape the Russian forces in a way that is more favourable to the offensive for the Ukrainians, or hold the Russian forces in areas for then your mobility warfare, and to outmaneuver the Russian forces by going around them in some areas and fighting from less protected flanks. Large-scale manoeuvre warfare is something that we have seen the Russian forces not be able to perform in large throughout this war. Remember, you always want to engage the enemy on ground of your choosing, at time of your choosing, and you want all the conditions to be favourable to you on the offensive. That said, mechanised manoeuvre warfare is incredibly difficult. Armoured vehicles are fast. They can go a lot of places. They can move anywhere. And I know this firsthand because I was a mechanised infantry soldier. I've done simulated mechanised manoeuvre warfare before, and nowhere near even on this scale, and it is incredibly difficult, and the command and control of these elements moving around is incredibly difficult, and with everything it's risk versus reward. And in the case of manoeuvre warfare, it's super high risk but also super high reward, and we saw this somewhat in the Kharkiv oblast earlier in the war, which was late last year. High risk, high reward, and it paid off then, but can it pay off again? Right, so enough of me talking. As always, let's have a look at the maps and actually see these changes firsthand and what is going on. So of course we have Ukraine in the center and the capital of Kyiv. Some reason people are flaming me for saying always that the capital is Ukraine. Trust me, I've been there. I know that it's not. But in the red areas, we have areas occupied by Russia since 22, and in the purple since 14, this being Crimea, Donetsk and Luhansk in here. The green areas liberated by Ukraine since the 22 invasion. We've got Romania, Poland, Belarus and Russia around here. And where we're going to come and where we've seen the changes is in this Bakhmut region. We need to zoom out a little bit from normal because we're seeing these changes on the flanks. We're not seeing these changes in the centre. Now, these flanks is where Yevgeny Prigozhin, the leader of Wagner group, for a number of weeks now has been criticising the Russian armed forces about the lack of ammunition on his behalf, but also the lack of flank security when it was handed over to the regular forces, primarily the VDV in some of these regions, being the Russian paratroopers. But the last time we really spoken and had a look was about the 8th or maybe the 10th. So this is where we saw the last update. So let's just roll forward from there. So on the 9th, we do see this, and this is what we spoke about last time, that Ukraine did have a push to the east, just to the south of Bakhmut. And then we see really not much on the 11th. And then we come to the latest map update and we see some major ships. I've confirmed Ukrainian controlled territory by the blue-green here, and we see some more movements to the north of Bakhmut as well, with these arrows here disappearing. Now what I'm going to show you is that this map is well out of date, especially when we compare to the Western sources ISW map and some of then the Russian sources map. The reason we do this is just to show you that there is a fluid front line here and that the front line is moving here. So what we're going to have a look at, of course, is the ISW, and we see a lot more blue here, most notably this road of life through Kromove here, which we can see on the deep state, which hasn't updated today, but they're saying that the res right up to this, which is in this region here, has pushed majorly back up to this reservoir and cleared major control all around through here. So what we do have is then the ISW map from last time I spoke to you guys. So let's move this over to the side. And this one here, so what we saw is just this tiny blue bit of Ukrainian controlled territory through Kromove here, and this road through Ivanovsky here. Now what we see is a major push off this Kromove road back to the reservoir that is way up here, it's off this map, and also a massive push back from this territory, back to where it was only assessed, not controlled, off the road from Ivanovsky, with many saying now both these roads are able to now be used, at least the road of life in whole, Ivanovsky with more back roads through, but that has gained more control along here. And these are major ships, and we come into the centre. One thing in the centre is we haven't seen really any shift right in the very centre of Bakhmut, where primarily the Wagner forces are working, if not actually more assessed control right in the centre. But these flanks are definitely being cleared by the Ukrainian forces off the Russian troops and Wagner group, as well as we've seen Russia both pull back and Ukraine conduct successful offensives in these regions. Now, this is made even more confirmed by these Wagner maps that have been released, with this one, the most notable one, being on the right, which only came out a few hours ago. So last time I spoke to you, the 9th of May was the most recent update we had that just showed this 3 kilometre or 2 kilometre offensive by the Ukrainian forces, there being the Azov brigade, on the southwest of Bakhmut. Here, now we see the most recent one here. We see major shifts and these huge pushes off of the road of Kromove. So where we're looking is right here, where they said they'd crossed here. This is this reservoir, this is the road, this is the reservoir. So this huge push back, as well as more cleared land around here. Although the centre is looking similar, if not a little bit more gain in the very centre of Bakhmut, but these flanks have been cleared off. And let's just compare this across another couple of maps. So we have the war mapper on the right of the 12th, which is today or yesterday, but it's the most recent one. And here we have the 9th of May one here as well. Now what we're seeing is this front line down near Botohivka here and through Kromove. So we're seeing a clear up to this river going through then to this reservoir. So this has been cleared, as well as a push in here. Now, I think interestingly, this map, which is very on the Western pro-Ukrainian side and is very conservative towards Russian gains, isn't showing the same amount that the Wagner group is mapping. Wagner group map is showing of this clearance right up to this reservoir through here. But remember that this Wagner map is the most recent one to come out, but the Wagner map will also be the most conservative to any Ukrainian gains. So when it comes to Ukrainian gains on this, the Wagner map will absolutely not show as much as it probably is, as the West ones won't show the much of the Wagner or Russian moves as well. This is why we look at it. So if the Wagner map is saying they're cleared up to here, I will say that this map is definitely up into this region here somewhere, and clearing further down near Ivanovsky, not shown here as well. So it is very interesting, and Russia are losing a lot of ground in these regions. So the last map to have a look at is, let's have a look at the Rybar Russian sources here. So we've got the Battle of Bakhmut from the other day, and then the most recent one here. So this is the one I used on the last video, and here. Now, these are of different perspectives. That's not as zoomed in, but we will zoom in to a similar picture and show what is different. So we have Kromova, the road of life through here, and this is Kromova. So we're seeing that Wagner forces, the orange and red and the red, are right up to this road. Well, the Russian forces, not only Wagner in this area, are operating, and they've been pushed back dramatically all the way to this reservoir, which is the same as the Wagner sources are saying, with the blue, of course, being the Ukrainian sources here pushing in, and the Russian forces leaving across here by these red arrows, as we have seen a push also by these red arrows of more into the centre. But we can see, if we line these maps up, this is the old one, this is the new one, major changes to the west of Ivanovsky, with a lot more area cleared through here with these open terrain, and dramatically to the north as well. So huge changes all across the front line, especially to the north and south of Bakhmut, with Ukraine clearing a lot of territory. Now, what does this mean? Well, it means that Ukraine have a lot more territory, but is it Ukraine pushing for then a surround of Bakhmut to cut off the Russian forces, potentially, but does it then open up Ukrainian forces to being cut off in areas as well, like in this region we see here, potentially as well? Any pushes in gives you and opens you up to the opportunity that you could then be, from there, cut off and pushed in. But we could see that that also happened to the forces left in Bakhmut from the Russian side as well. So what will we see in the next couple of days? We are unsure where this will exactly lead, but this region for the Russian forces is not looking good, as we know. The cost here was massive. And we have two videos here of Yevgeny Prigozhin, the leader of Wagner Group, talking about the situation here. Yevgeny Prigozhin talking about the situation here. So he gave off the flanks to the regular forces. So then, if you look what happened in Bukovka, around that reservoir, it means the enemy, meaning the Ukrainian forces, will then approach Bakhmut.
Верховского водохранилища, так сказать, с выходом, с потерей этих территорий, которые оставили, а это 5 квадратов, то, что называлось окружением Бахмута, высоты, с которых Бахмут находится как на ладони, говорю, длительное время. Поэтому министр обороны и начальник генштаба, после этого они решили, что их отважные военные встанут на фланге, но они убежали. Дают 10% максимум от потребностей. И военную технику, рассчитывая, что ЧВК «Вагнер» наконец-то сдуется. Следующих подъездов нам осталось около 20 зданий в частном секторе. Но взятие Бахмута проваливается. И попытки министерства прекратить немедленно врать. Если вы убежали, занимать эту оборону. Это просто ничтожество. Длительное время начинает свершаться к великой.
And we have this video as well of Yevgeny Prigozhin, where Zelensky says that the counteroffensive still needs time to take place, that Prigozhin says that it is now in full swing on the ground, and the Ukrainian forces pushing through Bakhmut.
Контрнаступление идет полным ходом, наручается. Мы дальше идем в Артемовске для того, чтобы его захлопнуть. Нас. Для ВСУ важно сейчас проломить Артемовск и Запорожье. Им нужно сначала разобраться с тем боевым духом, идти в Запорожье, Брянскую, Белгород. Вооружение, технику, танки и все остальное, они северное направление и южное направление, которые было даны Министерством обороны, не исполнены. А каким образом мы идем, я вам потом расскажу, когда добьем Артемовск.
So the ground is definitely fluid and things are happening on the front line, as we hadn't seen really any changes for a while. But I think there's two large elements to this. Of course, Ukraine are conducting offensives in that area and succeeding and taking up positions and clearing positions from the Russian armed forces and Wagner Group, as well as Wagner Group are operating in the centre of Bakhmut and continuing still to have some small, tiny gains in the very centre. But I think there's another element of this, that the regular Russian forces are really leaving Wagner Group out to dry. Now, the Russian forces are commanded by Shogu, who has been heavily criticised by the leader of Wagner PMC, Yevgeny Prigozhin, over the last couple of months, time and time again, over ammunition supplies to his PMC, and also the lack of flank security that Prigozhin has been saying, that the flanks are not being secured by the regular forces for Wagner to have an effect in the centre. And this is somewhat exactly what we have seen happen. And we took this initially as sort of Yevgeny Prigozhin being the boy who cried wolf. But something we should not forget is the cost of human life in areas like this. When we talk about movements of a few kilometres or a few hundred metres, the cost of life here and what it's taken to take this is immeasurable. And whether you're pro one side or the other or neutral, you should observe and respect the cost of human life sacrificed here for this. And this isn't just a red or blue line moving like you or I look at and talk about. This is territory ground away by men's blood, fathers, brothers, sons. It's unbelievable how much the cost of life here for such small territories has been. Being that both sides have claimed that Bakhmut is the meat grinder, which is a horrible word when you think about it, when it's humans doing it. And this has been relatively true, though, on both sides of this grinding down of forces. But what effect has it actually had on real combat capability of the Ukrainian armed forces, Wagner Group, and the Russian regular forces as well? It's actually unknown exactly what impact this is going to have. And was Wagner somewhat being used to rebuild and rearm the Russian regular forces here, chucked in, used to be the meat, and the Russian regular forces be able to re-equip somewhere else? As we've seen Russian regular forces and their paratrooper VDV take substantial attritional losses very early on in this war. From a human stance, the meat grinder is a horrible thing, and many are saying this is becoming the modern Stalingrad. My take is gone are the days of massive sweeping counteroffensives taken over a couple of days that people are fantasizing about. Yes, Ukraine has some great equipment and some now highly trained guys, but Russia has huge numbers and has shown throughout history that they're willing to use these at extraordinary cost, and they remain dominant in the air and have dug in positions that the British Ministry of Defence are saying the largest defensive works that we've seen in decades. Can you outmaneuver these defences by amphibious or good command and control by armoured movements is currently unknown, but we will definitely see a fluid front line and we will see significant frontline changes coming. But I think we'll also see in a lot of areas just this continual grind of men and equipment taking months. I think a case study for this could actually be Wagner PMC. They had better troops, weapons and tactics than Russia's regular armed forces, and that was their solution to the Bakhmut winter offensive. And yes, we saw Wagner have some early success, but quickly they got bogged down and couldn't keep the pace and taking huge attritional loss. I think that could be a somewhat of a case study of that better troops, better weapons, better tactics are fantastic and it will give you gains, but to maintain that pace is very difficult, and I think Wagner was actually a bit of a case study of this. So what we also have is 2 Ministry of Defence updates to talk about. So here we go, the intelligence update. Since the start of 2020, the Russian MOD has ramped up the scheme to recruit Russian prisoners to fight in Ukraine. It is likely up to 10,000 convicts signed up in April 2023 alone. The summer of 22 prisoners were the key pool of recruits for the Wagner PMC expansive operations in Ukraine. However, the group highly likely lost access to the Russian penal system in Feb 23 when the public feud with the MOD was escalating. The MOD's prisoner recruitment campaign is part of a broader, intense effort by the Russian military to bolster its numbers while attempting to avoid implementing new mandatory mobilization, which would be very unpopular with the Russian public. And this goes against some contrary information here as well, that we thought that Russian prisoners were definitely stopped being mobilised into the Wagner PMC, but this is saying that the scheme to recruit Russian prisoners is still ongoing. But we do know that Wagner has increased its recruitment too from other areas around the world, being Africa, Afghanistan, areas like that, and actually from the West too. There are a number of Western guys going and fighting in Wagner Group as well. And we know that Wagner Group, even before this war, had a large contingent of people from Scandinavia fighting within Wagner Group, from some people that I've talked to in the know, in the Western forces. Now, the other intel update is from today. On the night of the 8th and 9th of May 23, the Russian Navy's Black Sea Fleet vessels launched 8 SSN-30A Sugarus land attack cruise missile against Ukraine. This was only the second use of Russia's LACMs reported since 9th of March 23, so about 2 months. Up to March 23, the Russian Navy frequently launched Sagaris. Russia likely temporarily suspended the use of these weapons because it wanted to rebuild its reserve stocks in the short term. Russia likely used LACM as a key capability to strike deep into Ukraine to disrupt anticipated Ukrainian counter-offensives. However, more strategically, Russia also sees conventional Sagaris and other LACMs as having an important role in any hypothetical conflict with NATO. How to use these scarce and expensive weapons is one of the numerous dilemmas Russia commanders have faced because the war in Ukraine has gone on much longer than they originally planned for. Now, this is something we do know. Russia does have still a lot of equipment in reserve and a lot of high-tech equipment we have not seen yet brought to bear in this war. So where will this go from here? Well, I think as we see Ukraine implementing more high-tech equipment, more Western equipment, we'll also see Russia have an escalation of more of this equipment that it may have been holding in reserve for what they say the hypothetical war with NATO. And this could include all the way up to these nuclear armed weapons. Now, I think the chance of us seeing that is still highly unlikely, but there is still a chance that we'll see weapons like that employed. Legends, I hope this was all right today. I know there's going to have to be a lot of cuts in this video because I'm just not used to where I'm set up at the moment. It's just not feeling a home for me. But if you'd like to support me, there's links down below, but never feel obliged. Look after yourselves, have a great weekend, and I'll speak to you soon. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.